Sometimes a single piece of mail can just change your entire life. Back in 1911, one family faced this huge, life-altering decision, and it was all sparked by a letter. They had to choose between the familiar life they knew and a dream of a new beginning, almost 3,000 miles away.
Can you just imagine hearing those words? That's Charles Auble, talking to his wife, Georgianna, holding a letter that carries the weight of their entire future. It's such a simple sentence, but man, that's the spark. That's what kicks off a profound and really difficult conversation.
Okay, so picture this. It's 1911. We're in a parlor in Chicago. The air is filled with all the familiar sounds and smells of the city. But then a letter arrives from Georgiana's brothers out in California, and it introduces this radical new idea. It plants a seed of change that's going to force the Auble family to question literally everything they know.
So who are we talking about here? Well, at the heart of this story are three people. You've got Charles, he's 61, feeling the weight of his years and kind of dreaming of one last great adventure. Then there's his wife Georgiana, the practical anchor of the family, the one who has to balance his dream with their reality. And finally, their daughter Emily. Her future is the silent but incredibly powerful motivation behind this whole thing.
So you have to ask, right? Why would a family with such deep roots even consider leaving everything behind? Well, to understand the pull of California, we first have to understand what was pushing them away from Chicago. Because the reality of their life, it was far from easy.
Let's just start with this one number, 61. Now, in 1911, that was a pretty significant age, especially for a guy like Charles. He was a painter who relied on his hands to make a living. For him, age wasn't just a number. It was a physical reality he felt every single day on the job. And a huge part of that reality was the brutal Chicago environment. I mean, we're talking about a city where the rattle of coal wagons was constant, and the smell from the stockyards was just a permanent part of the air. It was a gritty, tough place to live and work.
And this wasn't just some abstract hardship. Charles felt that cold deep in his bones. For a painter, if your hands are too cold to work, that's not just an inconvenience. That's a direct threat to your livelihood.
And they weren't new to the city. Charles had been in Chicago for 23 years. Think about that for a second. Over 2 decades of building a life, a career, a community. He knew every street. He knew every other painter in the Union. This makes the thought of packing up and leaving not just a logistical challenge, but a really profound emotional one.
So now that we've got a picture of the harsh realities of Chicago, let's turn to the other side of the country. A powerful vision was being painted in those letters from Georgiana's brothers, a vision of sunshine, health, and big opportunity in San Diego.
The contrast really couldn't be more stark. On one hand, you have the grit and grime of industrial Chicago. And on the other, you've got this almost mythical dream of California, a land of endless sun, orange groves, and the Pacific Ocean. That is an incredibly powerful pull. And this quote, this just perfectly illustrates the simple, potent appeal of that dream. 70 degrees in January. For a man whose bones ached from the winter cold, that single fact was probably more persuasive than 1,000 arguments. It was the promise of a completely different way of life.
But Charles wasn't just a dreamer. He had absolutely done his research. His case for California was built on solid, practical points. He saw San Diego as a booming city that needed good painters like him, which meant year-round work. He even noted the new union, Local 333, which meant professional security. And crucially, he looked into the schools for Emily, making sure her future would be brighter, healthier, and filled with opportunity.
So now we arrive at the critical moment. The arguments have all been made. It's time to weigh the comfort and security of the only home they've ever really known against the uncertain promise of a new life out west.
And this was the choice they faced, laid out plain and simple. On one side, everything holding them to Chicago. Decades of history, work, community, the safety of the familiar. On the other, the powerful pull of San Diego. Better health, a chance to build something new, and a brighter future for their daughter. Every single item on this list carried immense weight.
And this quote right here, this reveals Charles's deepest motivation. It wasn't just about escaping the cold or finding work. It was about recapturing a sense of purpose, to feel like he was building something again, not just surviving. He wanted to make his mark.
So with the emotional core of the decision laid bare, the story shifts. The debate is ending, and the resolution is beginning. The Auble family commits to a new path, and their great adventure truly begins.
In the end, it was Georgiana, the pragmatist, who saw the hope in her husband's eyes and the logic in his arguments. She thought of her daughter, and of Charles's health and his spirit. And that was that. The debate was over. She agreed. The decision was made.
This quote from Charles really captures the spirit that sealed the deal. It's a reminder of their own resilience. Hey, they had built a life from scratch once before. This wasn't about running from a challenge. It was about having the courage and the partnership to face a new one, together.
And so, the dream was turned into a plan. First came the agreement. Then came all the meticulous planning, letters and finances. Then came the hardest part, selling possessions, packing a lifetime into trunks and saying goodbye. Finally, in late 1911, Charles, Georgianna, and Emily Auble boarded a train and headed west, toward their new life.
The Auble family's story is such a powerful reminder of the risks people take for the promise of a better life. It really makes you think, doesn't it? For hope, for health, for a chance to feel like you're building something again. What dream would make you leave everything you know behind?